If there's one thing I really cannot stand, and I think most people cannot stand, is people being dishonest and trying to make you believe a thing when it's simply not true. Especially when it's demonstrably false, because you can point to a document, a time, a statement, or even something by that party themselves that proves that it is just not true. And I see lots of posts by this Labour Party, which, in my opinion, based on the facts that I will present to you and you can make up your own opinion, are false. I say that because that's a bit of a legal protection for myself to say that. It's my opinion based on the facts that I present to you, but you are invited to form your own conclusions. Today's instalment is this one here, and it's kind of a double whammy, really, because they sort of double down on it. Different people and the Labour Party itself posts things like this. Allow me to take you through this. It says, Labour is taking back control of our borders. Now, there's a couple of reasons this is wrong. First of all, what I responded to it, which I'll show you in just a second. And secondly, the bit that it says on screen here with this net migration almost halves. I'll come back to that in a minute. But first of all, my post in response to this was, I beg to differ. The evidence suggests otherwise. This screenshot from me is the small boats crossings, and this is the figure from the 21st of May. 825 people crossed in 13 boats on the 21st of May, and the day before, 49 people crossed. So how on earth can they say that they are taking back control of the borders when they allow literally dozens of boats with literally thousands of people just rock up on the shores? That is not taking control of the borders, and I don't care who calls that right-wing to say or not. It's not right-wing. It's just patently obvious that it is not taking control of the borders when you have thousands of people crossing on dozens of boats and they claim to have taken back control of our borders. It's just not true. Secondly, they use this post here and figures from the Office of National Statistics to back up the point that they make, which again is palpably, demonstrably false. Allow me to explain. It says that they're taking back control of the borders and then quote post this and says UK net migration almost halves in 2024, falling to almost to 431,000. Now, don't forget that Labour didn't come into power until halfway through that year and did not put any policies in place for the remainder of that year. Ergo, how on earth could they have had any effect on the migration net levels of that year whatsoever? But they doubled down because Mike Tapp, there's many people post, so I'm not picking on him as such. This is just one that I came across. Mike Tapp says, we are witnessing, and this is why I'm doing the video, because the irony knows no bounds here. He's criticising Reform Party and Reform supporters by saying, we are witnessing a Reform Party implosion today as they try to spin this Labour government halving net migration in under 1 year. Great progress, more to do, with this flag-waving GIF here that says net migration halved. Now you can see it's been community noted, it's a community notes waiting approval, but that didn't go unnoticed. James Cleverly, who you'll remember was responsible for many of the policies, along with Suella Braverman, to actually make this happen. James Cleverly says, are you being intentionally dishonest or accidentally clueless? And the reason he says that is this is the reason why those figures have dropped. Changes to legal migration rules for family and work visas in 2024. Now, we'll read very carefully together. On the 4th of December 2023, the Conservative Party Home Secretary James Cleverly announced changes to the visa rules, what he described as a 5-point plan to reduce immigration. The Home Office released more information later that month, including some adjustments which had initially been announced. The changes came into force in accordance with the 2 sets of revisions to the immigration rules in February and March. The Labour government, which took office in July 2024, supports most of the new rules, although it is reviewing the policy on the minimum income to sponsor a spouse or partner visa. And so this is the reason that these numbers have fallen, because these are the policies that were put in place for 2024, and there are no other policies during 2024. The only policies put in place by this Labour government are the quote-unquote smashing the gangs thing, which, if there is any credit due, fair enough. However, we haven't yet seen that materialise in numbers arriving in the country. In fact, the net numbers of people arriving in the country illegally by small boat have gone up, not down. So whatever efforts they're putting in further up the chain it hasn't materialised on the shores yet. Even the BBC is giving credit to Conservatives on this one. They say their headline, estimated net migration fell to 431,000 in 2024, almost halving the 2023 total. Why the fall, reports the BBC? The ONS puts it down to falling numbers of people coming to work and study, particularly student dependents. Credit where credit's due, this is largely down to restrictions introduced by the previous Conservative government. Loud and clear, this point was made several times over by members of the former government, including Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly, Chris Philp and Robert Jenrick. It's good news for Labour too, they go on to say. The government pledged to bring down its levels of migration during the last year's general election campaign. They will inevitably point to these statistics as evidence that they are delivering. The government line, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says the fall is important and pledges that the White Paper set out radical reforms to bring that number down further. In other words, we hope to do better, but that's not happened yet. Even more numbers, separate figures shared by the Home Office, show 109,000 claimed asylum in the last year to March 2025, a slightly different period of the ONS, but an increase of 17% on last year. So just to reiterate that so it's not skipped over too quickly, the slightly different figures on the asylum claims in the year to March 2025, so a slightly different period that they're talking about because it includes up to March 2025, not just in 2024, but nonetheless, an increase of 17% on last year. So the only numbers really, whilst they've been in office for a longer period of time, are up, not down. So some people ask me why I don't get into politics. Well, it would drive me absolutely mad because I can see from this post here, James Cleverly is obviously really frustrated. So this kind of debate between MPs on a public platform, accusing each other of being dishonest because they're claiming credit for something they did not do or have any contribution to. In fact, as I recall, Labour were voting against measures that were stopping the boats. They were voting against the Rwanda scheme, which was a deterrent, however they look at it. Whether you think it's a good scheme or not, it was a deterrent. They scrapped that, only to then come back for a U-turn and try to find other countries to send them to. But they don't want to do the Rwanda scheme because obviously that was set up by the previous government and they don't want to go there. That would be too much like admitting defeat. So look, I am not stark avidly against Labour and I'm not a firm anyone else supporter either, but I do call out nonsense when I see it. And remember that this is what we do. So in our personal life, our professional life, and in this case, me acting as a commentator, I suppose, on matters of public interest, calling out when people are saying things which are either not backed up in fact and reality, or worse, starkly contradicted by the documents and the facts at hand. Because control of the borders? No. Did they halve migration? No, not in my opinion. Not based on the documents and the history which you have clear and ready access to. And it doesn't end there. There are lots more posts claiming exactly the same thing and just gaslighting the public. Flat out lying, in my personal opinion, to the public. Because we have the Home Office here saying the UK's largest ever drop in net migration for any 12-month period. Well, that's a huge congratulations to the Conservatives for their policies before they were boosted out of office. Because Suella Braverman quotes posts this, where they say net migration cut by nearly 50%. Well, yes, based on their policies. Suella Braverman says this is thanks to the plan of measures that I pushed for as Home Secretary. Sadly, I was blocked from delivering them early in my tenure because it was over a year later until they were introduced. If we'd introduced my measures even a year earlier in 2022, over 1 million people would not have come into the country and net migration would be even lower today. Much more is needed to be done. This government must go further to fix the immigration crisis. I like the way she uses their words and says they must go further, because that's obviously their latest metaphor. Let me know what you think about this, but also I'm very interested to hear your stories and pick apart things. If you have a story where you think someone's been dishonest and they claim one thing today, but you look back at their history and their websites and all sorts of other things and you find actually those dates don't quite add up. If you find those things and there's a discrepancy there, send me the details. I won't use names and everything like that. I'll keep it all anonymous, but I will point out examples of how you can take one thing that they've said, take something else that they've said and said, do you know what? This makes it look like you're lying. That might be quite interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Please do like the video. That really does help my videos spread to a wider audience. It helps much more than you know. Just clicking like makes YouTube spread the video to a wider audience. Make sure you subscribe. About half of you still don't. Please do that. And as always, thank you for watching.